After the new comic days, after the dinners, after the final night under those fluorescent lights, there was the Alternate Realities Gang, a community wrestling with the legacy of the store that brought us all together. In this final My Comic Shop History event, experience one last year with the AR crew in a story told over 4 seasons. And now, the music of Ralph Puma.
Lost composure, but I made it through. For so long I was hurting, but I finally found the truth. Can't stand to live without you. Can't stand to be around you. I can't be with you anymore. I can't be me around you. I can't even breathe around you. I can't be with you anymore. I've been asleep so long, lost composure, but I made it through. For so long I was hurting, but I finally found the truth. It's no one's fault, we're all so lost. For so long I was hurting, but I'm gonna make it through.
Welcome to the My Comic Shop History Farewell event. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. This is For All Seasons, Chapter 1, Winter. And joining me is Alternate Realities legend, Dr. Bill Maio. Welcome.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm so happy, as always, to join you on a podcast, especially one that talks about alternate realities.
Yes. This is the first of the final 4 episodes. And I know we've had a variety of finales in the past with varying degrees of finality, but truly, these are the final 4 episodes of My Comic Shop History, 4 quarterly episodes, each tied to a season of the year that will be released over the course of 2023 as we reflect on the legacy of alternate realities and our community almost a decade out from the store's closing.
I can't believe it's been almost a decade. Really, when you said 7.5 years, it certainly doesn't seem that long. You know, that's for sure. But at the same time, it kind of does. And you know, it's funny, like the multiple finales that we've had. I feel like we had a finale, but then Steve announces, oh, we're going to go to a comic show. And I think that's what revitalized it all, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. In my defense, thank you. When you look at the arc of this podcast series, we did 5 seasons. And the 5th season was my county's comic shop history. And it was my tour through Westchester's lost comic shop scene. And the finale of that season was you, me, Steve, and Rich. And that really was putting a bow on the alternate reality saga. And I really did, for the most part, intend for that to be it. I figured I would do some special episodes when My Comic Shop Country came out. But otherwise, I really felt like, okay, we've told the story. And then at the top of 2020, when we had our New Year's Day Illuminati breakfast, pre-pandemic, Odo was like, oh, I'm Discovered Realm Comic Con as a vendor. And I was off. I was like, all right, new podcast series. You know,
you had a lot of content all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, it was the sort of thing where it was like, well, now here's a new story to tell, new material. Because I don't want to just, we can only tell the same story so many times and talk about how much we miss each other. So I figured, all right, this is something new. And then, of course, the world went to hell, and that little event fell apart.
Convenient for Steve, by the way.
Yeah, no, that really...
I think he was not really thrilled about the whole idea, as we talked about during that podcast. But, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely...
he certainly hasn't brought that up again.
No, and I don't think he ever would. And yeah, I definitely feel like he was not prepared for the level of enthusiasm that you and I exhibited towards this.
We were ready to go, and he was like, I guess we're going to sell bags and boards.
I know. That was his whole thing. It was like, people need bags and boards, and they'll be at the convention buying comics from other dealers.
At the store.
Yeah. I know. You and I are there. We're like, we want to rebuild alternate realities in the middle of the convention floor. He's like, I just want bags and boards.
It's like, I'm not flying in for that.
I know. And so that, of course, fell apart. And then we ended up doing other events. We did the longer Halloween, which
was great.
was a lot of fun. That was, you talk about a pandemic project. That was really born out of, I miss podcasting. I miss talking to everybody, and it created a great vehicle to reconnect with a lot of folks. And then just this past year, I did a couple of events, one with Fat Moose, another with Acme, the two stores that I've connected with on my journey that I've forged the strongest bond with. And so, you know, I think we've told some great stories, and it's been a great journey. And now it's important to know when to get off the stage. And so I just want to have a really beautiful, wonderful farewell run over these quarterly episodes. And I think it'll be great.
All right. Sounds good. So this will be the end of this podcast, the My Comic Shop History podcast.
Yes.
It's like an end of an era.
Unless alternate realities ever comes back. I think that's the only thing, but I don't ever foresee that happening.
Sounds like it's coming back in Steve Oto's basement, but that's to be seen.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that up. So for anyone, because I know there are a lot of Steve Oto fans who listen. For people like, what's up with Steve and where's Steve? So Steve is going to be on our spring installment. You know this. This is no slight to you. My original plan was to kick things off with Oto. And when I asked, like, hey, what's going on, this and that, he related everything that he's doing in a very long text to the point where I said, you know what, how about you want to do spring instead? And he was happy to do that. So he's been busy, and I'll leave this for him to really share the details with. But just to give people a snapshot of what Oto's been up to, he moved. He moved out of his lifelong White Plains house to a new place in Connecticut. So he moved. He's almost entirely moved out of the Westies warehouse in White Plains that we've talked about a lot over the life of this podcast. He closed his Diamond account, which
there's been a lot of progress.
End of an era. And he is still selling
over
on
the matter
eBay.
of $12, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. He had a little bit of a back and forth with Diamond over a certain fee, which we'll talk about. And he's still selling on eBay. For anyone who wants to check out his wares on eBay, he's under the Super Oto seller name. So he's still out there. So he's been very busy. And yes, recreating alternate realities yet again. First he recreated it in the warehouse. Now he's recreating it in the basement of his new home.
Correct. Which I would like to go and visit.
Turns out, as always, it was really just the people that he was done with. He's the stuff.
He still likes the stuff.
He still likes the stuff, and he likes it laid out in the exact same way.
So the latest Facebook post was that he had got a new storage unit just to stage the stuff, going from the warehouse to the staging area, then into the new home, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for Steve. And I tried to call him 1 week, and he was not too happy that I called. He was like, "Is this important?" I'm like, "I just wanted to say hi and check in." He's like, "Well, I'm very busy moving." It's like, "All right, well, call me when you're free, I guess." And it's been over a month now, so call me when he's free.
I heard basically the exact same story from Rich Roney. Same type of thing.
Oh, is that right? I
tried calling Steve, like, you bit my head off. He's like, "What is it?"
He was so you would think he'd want a break from all this moving, but I didn't want. I mean, he's definitely in the groove where he has a flow, and I was disrupting it.
If only there were some function on the phone whereby you didn't have to answer it, and the
ignore function,
and the caller would be able to leave you a message. Yeah, I know.
It's the funniest thing, Just like in alternate reality, he always would pick up the phone to yell at the guy for calling on a Wednesday. Or just don't pick up the phone. Yeah, he's saved a lot of heartache, I think.
I know. In Devil's Advocate, it's like he sees it's you, he sees it's Rich. In case it's an emergency, right? He
for sure.
He doesn't want to ignore you. But no, it is very true. And the same thing at the store. It's like, I know, look, generally as a matter of policy, as a business, you want to answer, you want to respond. But if it's truly that busy where if you pick up, you feel the need to yell at someone for calling, maybe just let it go.
Yeah. So your thesis is, in order to maintain good business practices, you pick up the phone and yell at the customer because that's better than not pick it up.
I have to tell you, I have to save the story for when Steve is here, but just to give a little preview, I sold some equipment, some old podcast stuff that I don't use anymore, on Facebook Marketplace. Mm-hmm. Talk about the hellscape It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on and on about how frustrating it is to deal with people on Facebook Marketplace. But I had an exchange with someone, and the Steve Oda within me was flaring, and I restrained myself. But I said to myself, I was like, I know exactly what Steve would say to this guy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say it.
Give it to him for free.
And I really wanted to say it, and I didn't. I softened it. That's where the Rich Roney influence came out, and I was more diplomatic. But I'll share that with Steve when he comes on, because if he ever has any doubt about the impact he's had on the youths who came through the store, he needn't worry, because it's truly deeply ingrained.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm sure you wanted to break it and give it to the guy for free.
Yeah.
And maybe even say, "Daddy doesn't love you." I don't. His famous last words
to the final customer of alternate realities. It's still amazing. What a way to go out. It's so fitting.
You weren't there, right? I was there to witness that. That was wonderful. Tell her daddy doesn't love you.
That's the funny thing. If you were imagining what the final customer interaction at the store would be like, or if you were scripting it, right, you would probably make it either a regular, a beloved regular, or someone lost to time who comes back after being away for a while. And what a great way to finish. The first customer of the store comes back at the end, something like that. No.
Ending.
Just some random guy that Steve tears apart, and it's perfect.
It's great. And meanwhile, the guy sees the store literally in shambles around him, and he's like, "Hey, is it full price, or is there, things are discounted?" Which, I think we had been discounting things for days. But yeah, he didn't want to discount this one because I guess it was a special order. Oh my gosh, so funny. What did it matter? The $3, whatever.
I guess I could see it from both sides, because, from the guy's perspective, on the one hand, right, he sees it's going out of business. And typically, yes, you can get things at a bargain price. But at the same time, like you said, the store's in shambles. It's like, read the room. Maybe just pay and go. Oh, man. So,
good times.
Hey, everybody. For the first time in a long time, we're actually going to have a screening of the documentary film, My Comic Shop Country. So one of the shops in the film is Escape Pod Comics. They were also a guest on an earlier season of My Comic Shop History. They are currently in the midst of celebrating their 10-year anniversary. So first and foremost, congratulations to Escape Pod Comics on that milestone anniversary. To celebrate, they are hosting a number of events, including a screening of My Comic Shop Country. Again, the first screening in a really long time. So it's going to take place at the Cinema Arts Center in Huntington on Long Island on Monday, February 20th at 7:30 p.m. So that's President's Day, Monday, February 20th at 7:30 p.m. If you are interested in purchasing tickets, head on over to Cinema Arts Center with an R-E, cinemaartscenter.org. And I'm also happy to announce that Menachem Lukens, the owner of Escape Pod Comics, as well as someone everyone is very familiar with on this podcast, Sean Hendricks, owner of Fat Moose Comics, and myself will all be on hand at this screening, and we will participate in a panel discussion after. So if you're in the area or can get to the area and you want to come and check it out, we would love to see you. Again, so that's Monday, February 20th, 7:30 p.m., and head on over to cinemaartscenter.org for tickets. And again, congratulations. Happy 10 years to Escape Pod Comics. Who do you call when you're in trouble? Alien invasion? Call Superman. Bank being robbed? Call Spider-Man. But who can you count on if you want to learn how to make a window bag? Philtastic Comics and Art is here to help. Whether it's fighting FOMO, talking about art, or baking wheat cakes, you can count on Philtastic for your comic and art-related infotainment needs. The best part is, you don't even need a bat signal. Just look up Philtastic Comics and Art on YouTube. Subscribe today to keep up on everything Philtastic. Fat Moose Comics is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Established in 1982 and under new ownership since 2020, Moose sells a wide selection of new and old comics from every publisher, action figures, graphic novels, posters, statues, and more. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany, New Jersey the next time you're in the Garden State. And be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Oh, as far as other updates, we were talking about this off mic. I hate delivering this news. So about Spider's Web, last round of episodes, I had Lord Retail from Acme Comics, and in one of the episodes, I did a little segment like, where are they now? The stores that I featured on the podcast or in the documentary, and a number of them closed, and we talked about that. And sadly, we have yet another closure, and one personal to us, the Spider's Web in Yonkers, New York, closed after 10 years.
And Paul opened his shop pretty much simultaneously or right after we closed Alternate Realities. I mean, I think it was within months.
No,
correct?
It was before.
Oh, it was before?
Yeah, Paul opened.
But I feel like it was after Steve kind of announced that he was closing. No, it wasn't like, I'm forgetting now.
No. So, and I remember this, or I know this because it was Paul was open 10 years. So he opened in 2013. So a couple of years before the store closed.
Yeah, for sure then.
Oh yeah, opened right after.
That's true. Okay, yeah. Because they use some of the stuff from Alternate Realities in their store.
Exactly. So Paul Barrero, who's a longtime customer of Alternate Realities, he's been on the podcast. He was on the podcast in season 1 and season 3, and Spider's Web is in my comic shop country. He opened the Spider's Web in Yonkers, south of Alternate Realities in 2013, like we said, a couple years before the store closed, and, had this 10-year run, and then just a month ago or so just announced I'm closing at the end of the week. And I have no inside information. I mean, even if I did, of course, I wouldn't betray any confidence, but I've not spoken to him. I sent him a message and I just said, hey, congrats on a great run. I can imagine the factors that went into this decision, lots of luck. And he said, thank you. And that was really it. So I have no idea. Again, I assume this was born out of the typical challenges that we're all very familiar with when it comes to running a shop. I know he's posted from time to time on the store's pages about, hey, reservists, come and get your books. So I think that old problem.
There's some common themes. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many times had you been there? Obviously you don't live here now, so I wouldn't expect it to be a lot, but you've been there, right?
But I definitely visited Spider's Webs a few times, and it was usually with an AR crew member. So I definitely went with Steve in the past. And I definitely went with Rich Roney. I always enjoyed my time there. A lot of the times we went, I feel like they were like more focused on the gaming. They had like some Warhammer table set up or something gaming, maybe the Marvel Hero Clicks, but this is years ago, right? So that was when it was popular then. And so Paul was only there one time that I remember, but he was such a gracious guy, and he gave me an employee discount, because I was a former AR guy. Great guy. I feel bad that he had closed the store. I'm sure it was definitely a dream of his. I think when he opened the store, he said that, but I'm sure he's also relieved, knowing that maybe that part of his life is kind of over. And it doesn't sound like, even though he might have pointed out to some of the reservists not picking up his books, I don't think he did quite the same email or Facebook post that Steve did when he was, some people left him in the lurch.
No.
Such a good email that a decade later we remember it.
It was as fitting as that final customer interaction was, so too was Steve's closing announcement. And I know, look, we talked a lot about it at the time, about whether or not that was the right note to strike, but yeah, you don't forget it. And there's something to be said for that. And it was perfectly Odo. If it had been anything else, it would have just felt, off. So but it's sad about Spider's Web. And on a absolutely. Personal level, I feel bad. I mean, I hadn't been there literally years at this point. There was a brief period of time, 2016 or so, during the Rebirth era, where I had a pull list there. It was my little experiment to see if I could get back into going to the shop every week. And in the end, the experiment didn't really work. It had nothing really to do with the shop, but it was more just my relationship with comics had changed. And even now, because I tried the same experiment with recently, and same type of thing. I won't be continuing with the pull list. Again, nothing to do with the shop, but my comics consumption now is really all driven by what I'm covering on Digging for Kryptonite, the Superman podcast. And so some of it is what's coming out now, but I do read digitally, and now I have the option to read new DC stuff a month after it comes out in shops on the app. Of course, again, always support your local comic shops, but in my case, it makes more sense for me. Space is an issue. And so again, my relationship with it is different. For me now, it's far more about what I'm reading and watching for the podcast and those conversations that I have about the material on the podcast. It's not, it used to be about talking about that stuff with you guys at the store.
Yeah.
And now it's this whole other outlet that I have. So just my relationship with all of this has changed. And, but there was a brief time where I did go to Spider's Web, and they were always very good to me and very nice, and the discount and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was sad to see it go.
Whenever I walk into a comic shop, I hope to like rekindle a little bit of, what we used to have at AR, insofar as like, what are you reading? Can you tell me about some of the things you're excited about? And invariably, at least the shops around me here in New Mexico, nobody seems like they're really willing to engage, maybe the same way we did. And I think we kept not only ourselves kind of interested in a lot of the new titles, but also the customers as well. It was like part of what we did. I generally enjoyed it. Like if you had said something, or Rich had said something like, hey, you got to really read this book, I would jump on it and you'd read it. And then you'd have some extra stuff to talk about in addition to all the friendship stuff that we normally talk about. But, again, I've tried to, I've never had a pull list again at a comic shop, but I've definitely tried to re-engage certain titles that I used to enjoy. And, I don't know if the magic is gone, the writing has changed, or what's really different. Maybe me, that's different. But it's so hard with the modern comics to just, get excited anymore. And again, maybe it's because I don't have a book club or the people to talk to about it. But I'm more likely to read something that's published 30 years ago, or I'm super excited when you want to read something, and then we could talk about it on the podcast. I was telling Rich the other day, somebody locally here on Facebook Marketplace actually was selling the entire run of Nexus, right? So the Steve Root and Mike, can't think of his name offhand. Anyway, he did Badger also. Jeez, I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, I was super excited. I went and bought them all. I was like, I'm going to read some Nexus. Comics from the 80s are more captivating to me now. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I get it. No, like I said, I've had now 2 attempts to try to rekindle that routine. And I don't know. Look, I mentioned Acme and I mentioned Fat Moose, and those aren't stores that are local to me. Fat Moose is only an hour away, but it's not a weekly sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. If I were closer to one or both of those stores, it might be a little different. It might be a little different. Because I think the social component might be enough that either it would prompt me to keep up with the books in physical form on a weekly basis, or even if I was just picking up the occasional thing, I would still just go there and hang out. So I don't mean that as a personal slight on the shops here, but it's just, look, you have different vibes, different degrees of friendship and connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different factors that go into it. And again, I think Spiderwebs was a great store. It definitely had everything you can think of. Same with, both of those local to where alternate realities were. But, I think they lack a little bit of the community aspect, although from what I've observed. But it does sound like that Acme has it, and certainly Fat Moose has it, from what I've heard. And they cultivate it,
Yeah, for sure. But I will say to Mark's credit I have taken my son Milo there a bunch of times, and Mark's always great with him, and Milo has fun, and so it's that's one thing that's been new and different and positive, is that it's been an outing for us a bunch of times. Like, that's great. And look, as he gets older, if this is something that he's interested in as a hobby and wants to read, that would be fantastic, and that could open up a whole new avenue. Oh, we could bring back the podcast for that.
Yeah, there you go. I've tried and tried again to get Logan into comic book reading, but something about the generation, his generation, and maybe Milo's soon enough, they just don't go for it. I see less and less kids, certainly when I go to comic book shops too, for whatever reason. Maybe it's more they're just so used to consuming things digitally, and maybe they are consuming comic books in digital form. I don't know. But, I put a comic book in front of Logan and he kind of walks away. It's sad.
Have you tried digital with him?
I've had several times I've had the subscription for, the DC universe or whatever it is when we had to review something. And he was definitely excited about certain things. Like, he'd be like, oh, show me the first appearance of Batman. So you would see it. But then, it was like, oh, I don't know if I like this because, the art's a little crude and, the story's a little goofy. So, he's excited, but then once he engages it, he's like, oh, not really. So then it makes, engaging other stuff a little harder. And so, I'm hoping maybe as he gets a little older, he's certainly, on the nerdier side. And so that's a good sign that he might get into comics, but no signs yet, unfortunately. Because he would stand to inherit a great comic book collection.
There you go. All those Nexus comics.
That's right. Amongst other things.
No, it's cool that you tried, and maybe it's something he'll come to. I know that is, I do wonder about that. For all the talk that we've done here about the future of the industry and the medium, and just this whole idea of, is there a next generation, and how do you reach them, and how are they consuming this, if at all? So it's interesting. Does he like the characters? Does he watch the movies or the cartoons?
Yeah, so if it's anything media and cartoons, he'll like. He loved the Harley Quinn cartoon because I think it skewed on the sort of cruder side. And then he, appreciated that. He almost felt like he was watching something maybe he wasn't supposed to.
Well, yeah, I don't think he should. I was going to say.
I don't think any of us should. But, so he definitely does consume the characters to some regard.
There was an orgy in the last season.
We didn't watch the last season. Well, I think we watched the first season, whatever was on. I think we really enjoyed. I think JB Smoove, right, played the plant. It was hilarious. He enjoyed that.
All right, no, because in the last season they do a whole Court of Owls thing, and it's like a sex party.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, we haven't watched that season. Anybody who's listening, I've not watched that season with Logan. He's 12. But I want to talk about the future. Do we have time for asides?
We have no set agenda here. We were, audience. Bill and I were talking off mic. He's like, "What are we going to talk about tonight?" I was like, "I don't really know." So this can go wherever.
I'd love to talk about maybe the perceived future because you see a lot of these stores closing down, and you wonder what it is, right? And so we talk a little bit about this younger generation, maybe not interested in it, but let's talk about comic books themselves as terms of the longevity that they've had already. When you think about when they started in the 1930s, a lot of these characters date from the 30s, 40s, 50s, certainly 60s. I think we've had all of our characters that we have now pretty much from the 60s on. You think about like books, like a Hemingway book, right? He's got a finite series of books. And if you want to read Hemingway, you read these 10 books, whatever the books, and that's it. Or if you really are into Tarzan or something, you got the Tarzan series and then that's it. Is there a need to continue, into the future, stories with these characters forever? Or is it just like, well, this is what we have. If somebody really wants to read Batman, hey, read this story that was published, 30 years ago. And it's a great story. Why do we feel like as this industry, we just have to constantly be writing, maybe this is not a good topic for today, Anthony, I don't know. But like, why do they continue on? Everything else that's been in the media that's kind of like comic books has kind of died a slow death or died a death. And they just, maybe, revisited every now and again, like the Wednesday TV show that's a huge hit right now. The Addams Family was in the 50s and the 40s. They had like that brief, TV show in the 70s, and then nobody thought about them until the 90s, and they did a couple of movies. So maybe that's the more conventional way that characters and books like this and media like this should be consumed. And maybe stores close down because like you can't compete. Like, no, we're trying to, beat a dead horse. I don't know. How many times is Superman gonna save a cat out of a tree? I don't know.
This is a fascinating topic and question. I'm taking all of that in.
I obviously there's an answer to this.
I don't know. I don't know if there is an answer, but you do. Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. And look, talk about like ending the podcast and knowing when to get off the stage. There is value in an ending, and like you said, there are things that will end, they'll go away, they'll come back, but there is a little bit of a break. I think for longtime fans, the whole idea of this ongoing narrative continuity, there's an appeal to that. But at the same time, because now look, between talking to people for this podcast and all the other ones, one thing I've noticed and have experienced in my own life, it is exceedingly challenging there aren't a ton of comics fans I've spoken to who have maintained a consistent level of fandom and interest their entire life. right? So many instances where it's like, oh, I kind of fell out of it, then I came back. And that's understandable. Like, it's hard, it's hard to maintain.
Like anything else, you get fatigue, right? You get fatigued from the consuming the same media in the same form for 30 years, right? And I think that's what the comic book industry needs to deal with, is the fact that most of its readers are people like us, and we're tired of it. And it's hard for us to re-engage certain characters where it's like, well, my idea of Batman was 1980s Dark Knight Returns. And so when you put him in a weird, I don't know, that Batman metal comic book where he's got the spiky hair and you got the Robins on leashes, it's like, well, it could be shocking because nobody's done it before, but it's not for me, And so I don't know really what the future holds, but I think that the movies coming in, captivating a new audience, I think that's going to probably point them in the right direction or a new direction, because I think, like you said, continuity wise, 60, 70, 80 years of comic books, it's probably getting to the point where it's getting close to the end. I don't know. That's my feelings on it.
Also, there is the risk, right, of just comics always being there. You take it for granted and you assume it always will be there. And maybe that makes it easier to kind of dip in and out, or at least dip out, right? Because you feel like, well, they'll be here when I come back. And maybe you do and maybe you don't. As you were saying that and talking about your son, I was thinking about this idea that that has come up a number of times about, like you said, like he likes the other media incarnations of the character. And it does always beg this question, because a lot of times I think we look at it from the perspective of, hey, what people, kids or adults are consuming these characters in the movies and the shows and video games. How do we get them to read the comics? But the other side of that we've talked about is, well, what if that's satiating their need for these characters? What if that's enough?
Yeah.
How I mean, I don't know. And I know this will vary person to person, but you have to be pretty interested, right, to watch the movies and consume in all these other ways, and then be like, oh, but I also want to read the comics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's at this point impossible to get into, right? Even if you just fell in love with one of the characters from one of those shows, right? Let's Flash, I don't know. And then you're like, oh, how many comic books are there of Flash? Somebody who's new to this, maybe Logan, he might think that there's dozens, but then you tell him, I don't know, thousands of comics? Like, that's such an intimidating thought. I mean, I wouldn't even want to get into a character knowing that, but I get, if they were to move towards something that's like, well, we publish once a year a Batman 6-part comic book in a, prestige format or something like that, I think that would be go a lot further into getting new readers than, let's get 5 different Batman titles to appeal to all these different types of kids and adults and see what sticks. And what they wind up doing is just reset every couple of years. At least they've been doing that for the last decade. It's like, oh, well, this isn't working. We'll reset again. This is the new 52. This is the new whatever, in a bid to get new readers. But I don't know if any of it's working. I think we're all fatigued, whether it's the kids who just saw a movie and they find out how much is out there, or it's us adults where it's like I applaud you, Anthony, because you've been going through quite a bit of Superman, probably more than I've seen anybody consume. A lot of people collect comic books. Maybe they're like, oh, well, I want to collect the entire run. I think Brian O'Day was doing the entire run of Thor. He was trying to do it last time I talked to him. But I don't think they read all those comic books, but they're like, oh, I need these books, so you collect them. But you, on the other hand, you've been reading pretty much all Superman, whether it's the Golden Age, the Silver Age. I think that's the most impressive feat for someone our age, right? That's a lot of reading.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm really not concerned with the collecting aspect of it. It really is more just about learning and experiencing these stories. But whatever lights someone's fire is totally fine, I guess.
No, I have nothing wrong with collecting. I should say that. I'm a comic book collector myself, and I've collected a lot of things that I've never read. But it's funny how people consume certain aspects of this hobby.
Yeah, well, and to your point, I mean, I've always felt that titles should take breaks, and I understand these are ongoing monthly periodicals. Like, I get that, but I've always felt between creative teams, maybe you just don't publish for a couple of months instead of always having to have something, because then you create that scarcity, right? Like, it drums up some interest, and people then want it, and so you wonder what would be more effective, right? Putting out a book 12 or more times a year with a lower level a lower number of people buying it, or putting out, again, 1 or 2 big graphic novels for the year that everyone gets, and you make a big bookstore push and advertise it along with the movies. I don't know if that would make a difference, but again, I think they're valid questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't know what the future holds. I would love to, be a fly on the wall at some of these meetings at DC or Marvel where they're trying to, plan ahead the next couple of years of projections for comic book sales and books that they're excited about. I just don't know what goes into those discussions of, what they really think that the fans want. I don't think they really know. I don't think anybody knows.
The other thing, too, is I do think about this a lot in the context of Superman, and I've mentioned this a lot on Digging for Kryptonite, but it's relevant here where I always have to remind myself those early years of Superman, really within those first few years and beyond, Superman had permeated culture and media, right? So it wasn't just the comics. It was the movie serials and then the George Reeves series and the radio show and the newspaper strips. And yet the comics, all the kids were reading the comics too. So I bring that up because it's like now I think it's easy for us to say, oh, well, they're getting their fill from the movies, so they don't need the comics. But you go back and yes, it was a different time and there was far less competing for people's attention technology-wise. Right. But again, you had these characters, Superman in particular, in all these forms of media, but still the comics were the heart. So I don't know. But I don't know if that's anything that could sort of be revived.
They've tried so many things, right? They try to even have new characters or, change existing characters. I think when they got to the point now where, they're trying to appeal to, certain parts of the population, like let's say if we can get, these people interested in comic books, we'll do this, we'll make this character, swing a certain way, or, we'll turn this guy who was traditionally, a white character, we'll make him a black character, not racial aside, but it's just weird that this is the type of directions that they're taking versus it's like, well, maybe the heart of it, it's a dying industry and nothing we do is going to, bring back that mystique of Superman where he's permeating every industry. I don't know if that exists anymore, and the shock and awe that they try to do to, inject it with new life, it hasn't been working, at least. I mean, certainly a reader like myself, I used to read voraciously comic books, nothing that they've done has gotten me back into it. I enjoy the movies. I'll watch the movies and I'll be like, the comic book is better. But, I don't see myself rushing to the comic shop. The last time I was at a comic shop was to buy Superman in the Space Age.
Thank you.
Which I did. I got the first 2 issues. Actually, it's fantastic. I don't know if you read it or not. But,
I read the first one. I still haven't read the second one yet.
It's actually really that Lois Lane, thing that she writes. I was like, wow, this is really well written comic. But see, that's the thing. It's like, here's something that's like, a 3-part series that, it's great. Everything about the art's great. The story's great. Maybe they waited until they had something that was really wonderful and they put that out. I'd rather that than just, when you go to the comic book shop and you see like 100 titles and it's like, who has time to keep track of all these titles, When we were at the comic shop, when we were at Alternate Realities, it wasn't uncommon for people to come up to the counter with 50, 60 comic books in a week, right? I mean, we had some customers that had stacks, and the first thing you did was, you organize them by price so you can, ring them up quicker. But do you think people are still going to the comic shop reading 50 titles a week?
If they are, they're like 40 of them are Batman, because that's predominantly what DC's putting out. But look, I will say from what I've read and from what I've heard from people who are following it more closely and more up to date than I am, there really is some exciting stuff in the Superman books right now. Tom Taylor on Nightwing. I still haven't read any of it yet, but from what I've read of it and what I've heard, I think has really been something special. So, I think there's good stuff out there. I will say for myself, and I don't know if this is a failing of the publishers or just changing, taste within myself, but I used to care about the events and the continuity and sort of like the big stories. And now it's just, I guess I've been through enough of them where you realize it doesn't matter really. And what are the stories that you tend to typically go back to over and over? I'll be doing a whole run of episodes on the Crisis events on Digging for Kryptonite. Yeah. So, it's not that it's not that per se, but, in terms of the ones that are most formative to me and that I would keep going back to, It's typically not that. So, those kinds of stories really don't do much for me anymore.
Yeah. How about this? Give me something that's worth reading, right? You think about, again, to bring back some literature into this, right? There's certain books that were worth reading. They had something to say, a point, a message. I don't know. I think comic books, it's gotten to the point where some of them are very coherent. And like this Superman Space Age, I feel like I haven't read them all yet, but it has a message. It has something to say, beyond just being, entertainment, or like you said, just like, a periodical, right? There's things that you can consume just because, you're like, well, I got an hour, I'm going to read a couple of comic books, and you put them aside and you don't think anything of them. But then there's comic books where you sit and reflect, like something like Kingdom Come or something, some of these bigger, like Crisis was something that, at least when I was a kid growing up, at least it was something beyond just like, oh, this is a regular comic book where Batman beats up the Joker in an alley. It had a message, it had something to say. And I think that there are few and far between in the modern comic book world. Whereas I feel like if you step back and you look at the 90s and the 80s, I think there was a lot more of people like Frank Miller and Alan Moore, on the scene that had a message, that had something that was beyond, just, a story. And they use comic books as the medium to bring that forward, and I feel like, I don't know, maybe that's my, I say that because I don't really consume comic books as much as I used to. But I haven't heard, at least of anything recently, that it's worth, checking out. I hate to say, but I'm sure there is stuff out there.
There is, but I mean, maybe there's more to wade through to get to that. I mean, I definitely, when they announced Space Age, when I read the description and I saw those few pages, it was one of those things, like, you got the sense, oh, this is, like you said, this has something to say. This is special. This is something that probably going to want to have on my bookshelf, right, for years to come. You have that sense, and obviously not everything can be that, but maybe you want for more to be like that. And kind of bringing this full circle to Paul and Spider's Web, something that was big with him, and he talked about it on his episodes, and it was in the movie, I believe, and he even talked about this in there was some local press when Spider's Web closed, and he brought it up there too, about Marvel in particular, and his gripe about the comics sort of trying to mirror the movies, and sort of failing in bringing in new people, and also failing in keeping the attention of the older fans. So I know that was something that was a big issue from his perspective. So, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's the question for the ages, I guess. We'll see, 5 years, maybe we'll have an episode where the future is bright. I would like there to be, a bright future for comic books, but I don't know. I feel like it's going to need to change. I don't know. Maybe that's my curmudgeon-y old man kind of perspective at this point. I don't know.
No, it's all good. Well, when you said you want to talk about the future, I thought you were going in a different direction.
Oh, what direction? Opening up a comic book shop in New York?
Not opening up
Alternate Realities?
Well, there's a vacuum on the Westchester comic shop scene.
It's really just Mark then, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and Harrison.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
When I was young growing up, there was a lot of shops, or at least more shops. There was certainly Dragon's Den. There was the One Up by Cards on Central Avenue.
They just celebrated their 30th anniversary.
Did they really?
So now they're called American Legends. I had them on when I did that season 5, but they just celebrated 30 years. My family and I went there. We stopped by.
Okay.
Which was very
nice.
Mark
and Donna still own the shop?
Mark and Donna still own it.
That's great.
They were doing raffle tickets, and we filled one out. And then a couple days later, Donna called, and she's like, "You want a box of hockey cards?" And I said, "That's so nice." I said, "I don't want this to seem like I don't appreciate it. I do." I said, "But this would just be lost on me." I said, "Please, go to the next person and give it to someone who would enjoy it." But yeah, I'm so happy so that's happy update. They're still there. They just had this milestone anniversary. But yeah, you used to have that at the 2 Dragon's Den locations. I mean, it was just
there was Comics Heaven in White Plains, right?
Yeah,
there was Heroes Heaven. World, which you've talked about a couple of times. There was a lot of comic shops, but now it's surprising that we're down to one.
Not only is obviously Heroes World had been long gone, but even the Galleria now has closed. The mall itself.
Oh yeah, that was a long time coming. I was actually surprised it was still open. I'm not going to lie.
I don't disagree, but it was still, I saw that headline. I was like, oh man. So wanted to take a minute here to shout out my buddy Ralph Puma, whose music you heard at the beginning of this episode, and you'll hear it again at the end. That song is called Composure. I love it. It's one of Ralph's new songs. I think it lent itself beautifully to this episode. Ralph has been exceedingly generous with me over the years, allowing me to use his music in my various documentary and podcast projects. And you've heard me mention him on the show before many times. He was a guest a while back as well. And I am eternally grateful for Ralph allowing me to use his music. Perhaps most notably, his song Evil Deaded is the music at the end of the closing montage of my comic shop documentary. And then he also did a special acoustic version that played at a key point in my comic shop country. So if these projects have any sort of theme song, I think it's Evil Deaded by Ralph Puma. So again, the song you heard in this episode is Composure. He also has a new song coming out called So It Goes that you will be able to check out beginning on February 10th on all streaming music platforms. So I wanted to give props to Ralph and thank him so much for his support over the years and share a little bit more with you now about his style and everything that's going on. So here we go. Ralph Puma is an artist blending occult practice and punk influence to create emotive, intention-driven songs. His pop, punk, emo, and dark cabaret sounds have earned him a reputation as a unique voice in the industry. His latest single, So It Goes, features John Black and Tim Robbins and deals with themes of separation and grief. Ralph's past experiences touring the U.S. and living in Nashville and New York have honed his musicianship and style. He has played in several notable bands, and his music has been featured in various media. Ralph is currently working on multiple collaborative projects, with each song being a petition guided by intention for those navigating grief, hope, and revenge. Ralph continues to embark on an experimental expedition of sound. I mean, what more could you want? I've actually gotten a sneak peek at the music video for So It Goes. It's really cool. The song is beautiful. And I've been getting some sneak peeks at Ralph's other music coming up, and it's really tremendous. I'm so happy that he's back cutting new music, remastering his old music. It's really fantastic. So once again, thank you to Ralph, and to the audience, please go check out Ralph Puma on all streaming music platforms. Aw Yeah Comics celebrates and promotes everything that is wonderful about comics, toys, artwork, and the joy they bring to people. Visit them in person at one of their 3 locations: Harrison, New York, which happens to be my local comic shop, Skokie, Illinois, or Muncie, Indiana. If you have children and have been looking for a family-friendly store, look no further. Join Aw Yeah for exciting events, including creator signings, how-tos, and more. Visit awyeahcomics.com and follow Aw Yeah on social media for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me. Aw yeah. Acme Comics is a locally owned and operated full-service comic book store in Greensboro, North Carolina for people of all ages and walks of life. Now in its 40th year, this multiple-time Eisner Award nominee features a significant contemporary and vintage back-issue selection, as the Acme team uses their collective knowledge and resources to connect you with the best material. Mail order subscriptions to new releases are available, and all offerings are available anywhere via mail order. Follow Acme on social media and eBay, listen to the Acme Cast on all podcast services, and visit acmecomics.com for much more. But what I thought you were going to say, not opening a shop, but you and our mutual friend, Rich Friendship and Fun Roney, cooked up this plan for, well, I mean, let you say it. Yeah. This might be something that we talk about over these coming episodes.
All right, cool. So to preface this, so we have an Alternate Realities Facebook page that's kind of like the inner circle and a couple of, friends of the store. And I made a post the other day, and it was after a conversation I had with Rich. And one of the things that I find frustrating when I come home is that, the community it once had was that you can always expect on a Saturday night to go out to dinner with 2 dozen people. And it was like the most beautiful thing about the store was this Saturday dinner. And Anthony, you covered it in your documentary, and we've talked about it in the podcast. And it was really something special. And trying to recapture that has been difficult. And, I live in New Mexico. I come home very infrequently. And whenever I do, a lot of you guys are very gracious and we get together. But it's never the same gigantic crew. And so I was talking to Rich. We were talking about, what are the frustrations? Like Nick Robeson had just posted, he's like, hey, I'm going to be in town. And I don't think anybody really responded to him. And I think I was saying to Rich, one of the things is that everybody has their own lives. Here, me in New Mexico, every weekend I have something to do with Logan. You have family stuff. And I know you guys as well. There's so many obligations that have taken hold of our lives. I mean, back when the store was the store, I mean, we all were kids, right? And we had very few responsibilities other than, going home at the end of the night. I don't know. And so I said, well, the only way to reproduce that was to get everybody out of their normal situation. You got to take everybody out of New York or out of their day-to-day routine, bring them somewhere else, and then maybe we can recapture something where we're all together. As the friendship and fun will be revitalized. And so the thought was to make a destination, a comic book convention as a destination where we all would pick a show, agree to go, and then spend the entire weekend together. And I don't know. I think that there could be some legs to this idea. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? I know you said something very quickly to me online, but I think this could work.
Well, let me ask first. Did you get so Zach Wallner commented? I commented. Right. Have you heard from anyone else?
Nobody else. Oh, Metalhead. Metalhead is down.
Okay.
And so, which is exciting because I didn't think he would actually. He texted me. So one of the things is the cost, right? So the inherent cost. When we were living at home with our parents, going out to dinner on a Saturday night was fine. Now I'm talking about, going to a new city. This is involving plane tickets and hotels and convention costs. And so Zach Wallner had said, well, maybe we could pick something closer to New York. And then Anthony, you chimed in and said, well, I forgot what it's called, Terrificon?
Mohegan Sun.
And I think that's a great idea. I'll fly in. If you guys are willing to drive up, I think we could spend the night. I think it'll be a lot of fun to get the whole crew together, as a bunch of us together, and we could forget about our lives just like we used to do when we walked in the comic shop, or at least I did. Forget about your stresses and everything else, and just, we're back together as the AR crew.
My reaction when I saw that, I said, that's beautiful. I said, that's a lovely idea. It would be a lot of fun. And the first thing I said was, I'm happy to help and I'm on board.
Yeah.
The pessimistic / realistic side of me, the gut reaction was, from my experience and it's been a while, but my experience from just trying to organize dinners, it's hard enough getting our group to say, yes, put me down for the reservation, let alone trying to get people to book that level of travel. So
it could be an uphill battle.
So it was just born out of that. It's just like, this would be great if everyone was on board, but it's just, again, it's hard enough getting a definitive head count for dinner. So that's why I think, and again, I'm not trying to, it's just a suggestion. I'm not trying to impose this. If everyone's like, hey, let's go to C2E2 in Chicago, great. But I feel like with Connecticut,
that's actually what Rich has suggested.
Yeah. And it's a great show. With the Connecticut thing there, it's doable as a day trip. If someone was really like, I don't have the time or the budget to stay overnight, you could do it as a day trip. I think most people would do an overnight, but there's still no travel involved. But it preserves what I think was the heart of your idea, and a great idea, which is eliminating the distractions, right? And it's really just like putting us all in a specific place where the only real thing that we have to do is just hang out. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could work. Let's try it. Let's try Terrificon and see what happens. Even if it's just a small group of us, I think we can still start something, and we can see what happens in the future if we want to continue doing it. So this begs the question, Anthony.
Yeah.
What happened to the community? I'm in New Mexico. I have a pass. You tell me. So at the end of the documentary, I think there was discussion about the community staying alive. And so what do you think has happened?
I think, and this gets at the heart of, sort of the theme of what all of this has been about. And I think certainly these last episodes, like what became of our community.
Yeah.
I think that first, this is not what you asked, but I did just want to say that in just thinking about the store itself, one thing that I've really been actively trying to do, because I do think about the store a lot, and a lot of times the instinct is to be sad that it's gone. And I really have been trying to try to practice gratitude that it was there at all, not sadness that it's gone. And I really have tried to be mindful of that. But as far as the community and the friendships, I think that on an individual level, I think that they're there. I mean, I think that certain pairs of people or small groups still connect.
100%.
Totally.
I agree.
But this larger sense of community and the gather, I mean, unless it's happened and I've not been invited, like there has been no large gathering. The last time that there was sort of a large assembling was not this past summer, but the one before. I organized the thing at Shake Shack in Hartsdale on Central Avenue, and a bunch of people came to that. I'll say this, and I don't want this to sound like sour grapes or anything like that, but it's just my take, my feelings on this. So when I did that longer Halloween run of episodes, each episode was tied to a holiday, and I brought on an AR alum, and we caught up. We caught up and we talked about our friendship. And that was it was cool. Talking about the friendship that I had with each of those people who came on. And I definitely, my hope at the outset of that was, hey, maybe this will open the doors to more regular communication.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now that the people who I talked to on a regular basis before those episodes are still the same people I talk to on a regular basis. And the people who I really didn't have contact with on a regular basis, it's still the same case. And I'm not putting that on any of them because it goes both ways. Yeah. But I think there definitely was this hope that hey, this will kind of open the door, and it didn't. And as far as, well, why isn't there more communication and why isn't there any kind of gathering? As you alluded to a little while ago, and as we've talked about, the store was always that vehicle. It didn't require commitment, and it didn't require planning or organization. It was just this built-in, hey, you knew if you wanted to go to dinner, you showed up at the store, and we would go off. So now there's an affirmative step that needs to be taken. Somebody has to take the reins and organize, and then there needs to be a response. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, far enough ahead, too. I mean, I'm sure you're organizing weeks ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
The Shake Shack thing was probably a couple of weeks at lead time.
Right. And so I guess, to be honest, if there's any level of frustration on my part that comes in a little bit, is as far back as I can remember, and now probably, again, a decade or more. I mean, certainly since the store is closed and planning has been required. But even before the store closed, if it was an occasion or something that really required a head count, to my knowledge, it's typically historically been myself, Rich, or Mike San Gregorio. It's usually been one of the three of us who has sent out that email of hey, let's all get together. And Mike never seems too bothered by having to follow up and wrangle people. It always kind of annoyed me a little bit that either some people wouldn't respond or it was oh, I'll try to come. It's nope, I need to know because I need a head count.
Or do not.
And I think, I don't want to speak for Rich, but I think he shares that sentiment as well, where it's kind of tough when you're trying to get a response. So, that's probably part of the reason why, because anyone listening, well, Anthony, why don't you just send out an email, get people together? Part of it is that it's it's work.
And you've tried. And
it's I always used to think this was such a douchey thing when people are oh, I don't have the bandwidth for this. But it's you know what? I really, I don't right now at this point in time with everything that I've got going on. And so, the idea of trying to find something that's going to work for everyone and then following up with people. And then there's also, again, I'm just speaking my truth. There's this part of me that it's well, why does it have to be me? I won't name any one person, but it's why can't so-and-so who's never sent out any, can someone else ever say hey, we should all get together? That's why I loved the idea that you and Rich came up with and you putting that out there. But I'm frustrated on your behalf that so few people even responded.
And I've yet to feel the frustration because I've never had to do this before, right? So now I'm going to try and we'll see what happens. And I feel if the reason we picked the summer was so that everybody just says, fine, I'll do it. And it's some date that's so far in the future that, you have to commit and then you make sure that you don't book anything around that. But I don't know. We'll see. I said to Rich, I said, I'm definitely going to go. I haven't been to a comic book convention in God knows how long. I feel if we pick Terrificon now, at least I'll go, Rich will go, and you probably will, you guys will probably come up from New York, so it'll be fine. And if it's just the core bunch of guys, that's fine. But it would be fun to see if everybody would just, impromptu just show up. But we'll see.
I think we should at least try.
Yeah. I mean, I'm committed enough to try, and I'm going to try to organize it as best I can. Maybe I'll pull a little bit from Mike San Gregorio and try not to get some of your frustrations cloud my judgment, but I feel I will be frustrated a lot along the way. But again, if it's the idea is to be fun, right? So if it's not going to be fun, then I'm going to still have fun.
You know what? I'll offer this. First of all, I'm happy to help however I can, but I think it's the sort of thing. Once you have, even if it's just me and Rich, and metal too.
Yeah.
If we're like, if you know you have at least a couple of people who are going, you don't really need a head count, right? It's like, hey, if you're coming, get your ticket and book a room.
Yeah.
You know,
We're
if you're going to
adults.
stay over,
Yeah.
right? So, so maybe that wouldn't be too frustrating, but yeah, you know, for people out there who are wondering like, yeah, like, do they still get together and stuff? No. Now look, yeah, of course we had the pandemic and that curtailed any get-togethers for a long time. At this point, I don't know how much of a roadblock that is. I really think it's that there is a level of, again, planning, organization, affirmative steps that have to be taken. And for myself, why have I not done it recently or done it more? Again, it is sort of the frustration of trying to wrangle everyone. Why haven't other people done it? I don't know.
Well, Anthony, to speak towards you as a person and what you've done more for this community than anybody over the last 7 years, right? The store closed and you are single-handedly keeping it alive, right? I mean, for lack of a better word, there's nobody out there other than you doing this. I mean, it's an incredible, and I love you for it. You know, from the documentaries to the podcast to everything, just having us come on a podcast, you know, one by one, just to, you know, catch up with us. I mean, this speaks volumes of you, your love of the store, the community, wanting to keep it alive. I mean, it goes beyond just having, you know, fans on the podcast who might listen to us talk. I don't know who really finds this interesting, but I love it. You know, the fact that we're still doing it. And again, you're keeping it alive. And you have always been this whole time.
No, well, I appreciate that. And well, I mean, since you said it, let me, there is sort of this other feeling too, where everything I said before holds, where it's a two-way street and everything. But yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm being absolutely honest, there was that feeling. There is a little bit of that feeling of like, hey, by my inviting these people on the podcast, that is, you know, that is my way of opening the door.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, not much really came of it. I mean, we all talk to Rich the most. He's, he far and away, he has those weekly calls that a number of us get, and they're wonderful. And you and I would say are in fairly regular contact. Steve, we don't actually talk much, but we will exchange texts from time to time. And he posts so much on Facebook that I always feel like
absolutely
I talk to him more than I actually do. But I mean, you three, I really definitely look at as the three I am in the most contact with. On a positive note, I will say this, that I do genuinely feel like all of us, you know, will still be in each other's lives to some degree or another. And I know I know two things. I know that one, if I ever needed anything, like I know if I ever needed to call up Drew Cheskin and say, hey, I'm in a jam, like, I know he would be there. Like, and that means the world to me. And I also know that anytime that we do get together, as infrequently as it might be, I know it's fun. I know we'll pick up where we left off. And there's a tremendous amount of value to that too. So I don't want any of what's been said before to really, again, sound like sour grapes or anything, but.
No, it doesn't. But yeah, but you've been championing it, you know, trying your best. And so, you know, when you're saying that, you know, you wish somebody else would pick up the reins, I understand. And so here's me trying to pick up the reins a little bit. And I live in New Mexico, so it's a little harder to get the monthly gatherings or yearly gatherings. But I feel like, you know, maybe we could do a comic book convention gathering and it would be fun.
No, I love that. I love that. And, you know, that's something we can talk about over upcoming episodes and you know, talk about the planning, and then hopefully it happens. I mean, look, I'm on board. You and I will go, if nothing else. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, it'll be a bunch of guys. It'll still be a lot of fun. And anybody else who wants to come, any of your listeners who want to come and meet the crew, they could.
I know. Maybe we could get a panel, or we could do something. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't, not to be negative or harp on this, but I guess, I mean, we're here, we're talking about it. Again, I shared why I haven't tried to organize something in a while. You, of course, are away, and now you are trying to organize this destination thing. Do you feel any sort of way that others haven't tried to initiate a larger gathering? And again, look, we're all, of course, we're mindful. Everyone's got their own thing going on. Do you just chalk it up to that and you're like, hey, no big deal?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly that, but it's also the fact that, you know, we had, like you said, it was already built in. There was never anybody organizing a dinner. It was just always happening, right? So you never need to have anybody. But I feel like it would go a long way if old man Odo would step up to the plate here. right? I feel like he would be, since he was the one who brought us all together, if he wanted to continue the community, he wields a lot of power, right? I think he would have a lot of people who would jump at the chance to hang out with him again. But he's sort of become a recluse at the moment. And so maybe I'm hoping to get him out of the shell too. I haven't heard from him, nor do I think I will. I don't know. Maybe Rich will probably talk to him about it. I think Steve would probably come. But, he certainly doesn't organize anything, right? As far as I know.
No, I don't know. I mean,
you would think he would be the one too,
But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I totally agree that people would, or I would hope people would respond.
He didn't begrudgingly go to dinner with us on a Saturday. I mean, he was an active participant. He always was there. Very few instances I can remember him not going. So yeah, I'm surprised he's never taken the reins.
Well, it's funny because I definitely remember being at the store and him telling me, hey, if you want to come to dinner and Rich is coming in town, and he would do that with a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's true.
But I don't know. It's weird. It's just, I think the difference between, how do I put this? I feel like in those instances when he was at the store, right? And when the regulars and the friends of the store were there and he was saying, hey, you're going to be around Saturday? Rich Roney's coming in.
Yeah.
I don't think he looked at that as I'm organizing a dinner. Even though he was effective, he was, but I don't think he would have. Even now, if you were like, hey, remember you organized those dinners? You'd be like, wow, what are you talking about? And so I feel like now the idea of sending out a mass email to 20 people and saying, I'm going to pick a place. And we're like, I don't think that computes.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. If I was just, a random customer at a store and I had the owner say, hey, you want to come to dinner? That's like a great invitation. Like if, any of the stores over here, I would jump at the chance. And I think that you're right. He was organizing more than he really thought, probably. Yeah.
I know. But no, I mean, I think the convention thing would be a lot of fun, to spend the weekend up there at Mohegan Sun. And
so I've never been. You guys have gone to that show a few times, right? I think Drew goes yearly because Ron Lim goes.
I've never been, but the other guys have. They've spoken highly of it. I've actually never gone, so it'd be a first for me. But we could check out what the dining options are and make some that we would need a head count for.
Well, we could figure it out. That'll be a lot of fun to plan. I'd be happy to plan that kind of stuff. But yeah, we'll see over the coming month or so. I'll see if I can get some more interest. I'll flesh it out a little bit more, and maybe I'll send another email out.
And you know what? I think that. Look, I'm trying to head off any frustration. I really am looking at it from the perspective of. Honestly, even if it were you and me and Rich, and even if that were it, we would have a great time. So I'm looking at it from that perspective. Right. And it's like, look, you create the opportunity, you extend the invitation. You can only control your own actions. So if there are people who, and look, there may very well be people who just can't come and they might really want to.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And there might be others who, for whatever reason, it's that, they're not going to do that. But that's fine. It is what it is. But whoever's there will have a good time.
I think it's fun. Maybe I can pull it from Steve Oto's playbook, and I can get like special guests. Like I'll call up Doug Dosher and get Doug Dosher to commit, and I can send out an email. Well, Doug's coming, guys. Who knows?
I know that might just be the way to do it.
Yeah, I might do that. We'll see. I would like to see everybody. I haven't seen anybody in years. I feel like the pandemic was definitely made things worse. And not better, because I was coming in at least once, sometimes up to twice a year, and getting to see a lot of the crew, which was good. But the last few years, I've seen so few people in person. I haven't done a lot of traveling, so I want to change that this year.
I know.
And hopefully, you guys are ready to come out of your shell too. I know the pandemic is still in full swing, and so I'm hoping that it's going to be a little bit better. I mean, I'll listen. I'm going to wear a mask on the way here. I'll wear a mask at the convention. I don't care if that means I get to see you guys and hug you guys. I'll put on a mask. I'll put on gas mask if I had to.
This episode made possible in part by educator, hobby comic book collector, and pop culture enthusiast Sam Lim. Sam just moved to the South Jersey area and is looking to connect with other comics fans as well as retailers. They are also looking for comic shops to explore, so recommendations are welcome. Be sure to follow Sam on Instagram at SZL Comics. Filmmakers and movie fans alike should be sure to attend these film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Point Lookout on Long Island, and In the Cut in Bloomfield, New Jersey. On a personal note, my short film, By Spoon, the Jay Mizell Story, played at these fests, so I know firsthand what fun and well-run events they are. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Follow the festivals on social media for news about events, discounts, tickets, and more. Also, listen to the Hang On to Your Shorts and Cullen On Film podcasts, available via a shared universe network. Thank you to all members of my Patreon community for supporting this podcast. If you like what you hear and are not a member yet, please consider signing up today at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. We offer a variety of monthly reward tiers, and discounted annual memberships are available too. Beginning at the $1 level, you can listen to Digging for Justice, my exclusive DC movie rewatch podcast. Click the link in the show notes for more. If you're looking for other ways to support the show, leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcast goes a long way and only takes a second. You're also welcome to join the conversation on social media via the links in the show notes. Last but not least, we are an affiliate of BCW Supplies, so the next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Yeah, no, we were talking off mic. I had Rich Roney here in person at Flat Squirrel Studios over the weekend, and we recorded a couple episodes of my George Reeves Adventures of Superman rewatch podcast. That'll be coming out over the coming weeks. And
That's great.
And that's the first in-person recording that I've done since the pandemic started. I mean, in large part because of the pandemic, but also I have connected now with so many people in other parts of the country and the world. So there are a lot of people it just wouldn't be feasible to do an in-person recording with. But it was really, it was cool to hang out with. We went out for dinner after. Like, it was great to hang out and just to have the back and forth and have those conversations. That was a lot of fun.
And let me ask you a serious question. How is your hand from the handshake? Is it still as strong?
Yeah, because that was the question that we had, right? Coming out of the pandemic, would it have sort of atrophied and have been a weaker handshake, or would he have had so much momentum built up? I feel like he's just sort of calibrated. He's even.
His handshake was always the strongest handshake I've ever experienced.
Yeah. If you have not braced yourself for it, like you really have to get ready.
Over.
I've always maintained, I know I've said this a million, this is why we're ending the podcast, because how many friggin' times can I say this? But it's the momentum. That's the thing. It's not just that he has a big hand and he squeezes. It's that the arm swings out and down, and there's force behind it. That's, I think, what really 100%. Adds to it. Yeah. So, but it was fun. But yeah, no, I mean, it'd be great to see everybody. I mean, I wish Brian O'Day a happy birthday via text, in January, but I mean, I haven't seen or talked to him otherwise in forever. Roby got engaged.
I know. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah. So, but again, and I wish him happy, I wish I congratulated him over Facebook, but we haven't spoken. So yeah, I mean, the more guys we can get together for this, but you know what, now too, I guess I'll sort of argue against myself, and this sort of supports what I was saying about always being in each other's lives. Pete Dwyer was on a trip recently, and he came across something Superman related. He took a picture, he sent it to me. Metalhead was cleaning out his basement, and he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I've got the Superman stuff. Do you want it?" So again, that's the thing. Even when there's not the regular contact, like I said, we're in each other's lives, and that the door is always open, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, like I love that idea that we could pick up the second we left off. In regards to Drew, Drew's my best friend, and I don't talk to him nearly as much as I need to, where I should. But the other day I really needed to talk to Drew, and I called him up. We hadn't talked in God knows how long, and we didn't even go with the pleasantries. We just went into what I needed to talk about because I needed his advice on a couple of things, and he's always there for me. And he's one of the best guys. All you guys, I mean, really, you guys are my best friends. And it's hard being so far away.
No, I know. I was thinking about, of course, the closing of the store and that last dinner, the last big dinner that we had, the last supper, as we call it.
Yeah.
And I'm always grateful that Steve gave us a finale, right?
Yeah.
Because, like we said, there you see so many other scenarios where he could have look like with Paul, for example. I don't know how far in advance his community knew, But as far as what was publicized, it was literally like, I'm closing at the end of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, certainly other stores that experienced true catastrophes like a flood or a fire or something like that.
Right.
So, and then sort of the other option that you and I have talked about before, where if Steve had kept going, I wouldn't have wanted to see what the store would have been like after these years,
Yep.
So, he gave us the opportunity to really come to terms with the store closing and just with what it meant to all of us. And that truly was a gift. And I feel like we certainly recognized we were saying goodbye to the store. But I feel like we all, except for Steve, I chalked it up to his pessimism, but he was right in a lot of ways, where I think we were all pretty bullish on the idea of like, hey, we're all still going to hang out all the time.
Yep.
And we kept it going for a decent bit. But I guess I feel like I wish when we had that Last Supper, I had looked at it more as an opportunity to sort of, not say a final farewell to everyone, but to really more acknowledge the fact of like, probably not going to see you. And because there are people who are there who I've not seen since.
Oh, I'm sure. But, I never really thought about it as him giving us the finale. But you're 100% right. At that last week when I came into town to close down the shop, people came from out of nowhere, were coming in to help out. And, Steve didn't turn away anybody. We didn't turn it. I mean, it was just random customers helping us, with boxes and painting and taking down slot wall. I mean, it was the most beautiful thing. And then the last night when we all went out to dinner, there was, I don't even remember how many people were there, but 50 people. I mean, it was a big room that you guys, and you'd set up the dinner. And I remember it was going to be like $20 a person, whatever it was. But then Steve wound up fronting it for everybody. I mean, he took care of us at the end. It was a really beautiful moment.
He did, and I really think that ending, it truly was a gift because, again, I speculate about what it would have been like if he didn't close, and even putting the pandemic aside, just everything you said is true. Like everyone has their own lives, and I don't know, even for myself, like now I don't live 5 minutes from the store anymore. And I have a lot of obligations, and it's like, and we went on a whole thing about the state of the comics industry itself. Right. So I don't know. Are people, if the store were still here, would people be hanging out all the time? I don't necessarily think so. And then it sort of becomes, talk about things you take for granted. It's like, the store's always there. And maybe the visits get less and less frequent. You sort of take it for granted that it's always there. Whereas instead, again, Steve really gave us that opportunity to reflect and come to terms with the role it played in all of our lives and say goodbye to it. And I think that, look, we always love the store. We would always be thinking and talking about it anyway. But I feel like the ending elevated everything. It amplified everything.
Absolutely. And we all needed it 100%. At the time, I don't think any of us were ready to lose it, right? Not only the store, but the community. I talked about in your last documentary about the physical space, right? I mean, none of us really were ready to come to terms with it, but, Steve at least allowed us all in our individual way to kind of come to terms with it. I mean, I flew from New Mexico there to just, make sure that I played a part, and kind of putting it to rest,
Well, as we always joke, the person who loved the store the most, and was the most heartbroken over its closing, also was the one who made it possible, because truly, had you not come in and facilitated the emptying out of the store, it probably would still be there.
100%. He would have been just one more month. Yeah. I'll never forget, when I had called him, a week or 2 weeks ahead of my visit, he's like, "Oh, by the time you get there, all that's going to be left to do is paint." And then I showed up, and it's like a fully stocked comic book shop greeted me. It's like, well, nothing is what have you guys done? And I think Rich Roney coined the phrase. It was like they had taken stuff out, but it was like taking a cup of water out of the ocean. You would never have known.
And as much as we've been talking about sort of the inner circle and the degree of contact, well, let me just ask. I mean, other than me, Rich, Steve, and I know you said you had a conversation with Drew recently. Like, do you speak to anyone else on any kind of regular basis?
Not regularly. Although Brian called me out of nowhere. Brian O'Day called me out of nowhere, and we had a really nice hour-long conversation. And it was after he had listened to one of my podcast episodes with you. And it was just really great to talk to him. He had gotten a new job. He's now a manager, I think, at a grocery store. We just talked about what was going on with him. And that was really nice. And it made me think, it's like, I need to be the one calling people on the weekends like Rich Roney, but I just haven't made that leap yet. But I need to,
I know.
As the elder statesman, maybe I should do it.
The next generation.
We're getting to be.
The next Rich Roney.
I'm the next Rich Roney.
The next Rich Roney. The hell does that make me, Sco? Oh, God. But again, so, we're talking about like the inner circle, but I also think too about the customers, just not to diminish, but the regulars and just the people who were there who might not have necessarily come out to dinner with us, but were just the regular faces. And I was scrubbing through my comic shop documentary recently, just feeling nostalgic. And I was like, seeing these faces, a lot of names I don't even remember, but like just seeing all, like, these were the regulars, the people who were there all the time. And it's like, I wonder what became of them.
I think I mentioned this the last time we talked about the store closing. The very last day, like when we shut the door, we went out to dinner. It was like me, Steve, Drew was there. I don't think you were there. Metalhead was there. And Mike Capolino was there, right? And we had Mike Capolino in literal hysterics the whole time. And he was just like, I don't know why I didn't go out to dinner with you guys more often, And he was just one of the regular customers, but he was a regular customer, But he had never made that kind of leap to like, hanging out with us on the Saturday night. But, but he could have, right? I always wonder what happened to him and some of the other guys. We had a lot of customers at that shop.
Yeah, I ran into. I feel like I told this story on some podcast, but what?
Brian,
what
you saw Brian Claudio, right?
Yeah, maybe I just told you on the phone.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it on a podcast, but yes, I'm glad to know that he's okay.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about Brian Claudio in like a decade, and then you were like, "Oh, I saw Brian Claudio," and then immediately all these memories of Brian Claudio, that I thought of.
It was a fall afternoon, and my wife and son and I were having dinner outside of Bear Burger in Hartsdale on Central Avenue. And there's the Best Buy right there. And I see this figure clad in black, head to toe black, at mask as well. And I said, that's gotta be Brian Claudio. It's like, and he grabbed his bicycle. I was like, that's definitely Brian Claudio.
That's definitely him.
And he started riding his bike, and we were far enough away, and he's on his bike in the parking lot. I was like, I'm gonna try to flag him down, but he just like, we caught each other's gaze, and he recognized me and he came over, and it was great. And it was great to see him. We caught up for a little bit. He at the time was still shopping at Spider's Web. He talked about how he hadn't seen or spoken to Steve in a really long time. I think right after the store closed, Brian and Steve had this like regular thing. They would grab dinner at like TGI Fridays in White Plains.
That's so crazy.
And then I think the pandemic kind of put a stop to that, and they hadn't been in touch in a long time. And he was like, "Oh, I'll try to give him a call." And I don't know if he did. I don't know if they connected, but he's out. He's out. Like there are people out there.
He hasn't talked to Brian Claudio in several years. Is this an emergency?
Yeah.
He's probably just as mean to him.
There's this guy who would always come in and only buy previews. Mm-hmm. It was the only thing he ever bought, and he would ride this like little scooter type thing. And I see him in White Plains from time to time. I don't think he would even recognize me, and we don't acknowledge each other. But I see him around. I always wondered about that guy, that he only bought the catalog of what's coming out. Yeah. He never bought any of the actual items. So,
bizarre.
Was he ordering them elsewhere? And if so, where? Or was it just?
Back then, like you couldn't go to Amazon and buy comic books. I wonder where he was getting them.
So yeah, it's like, was he ordering through another store? But then why not? Like there was another store that didn't carry previews, so he had to get it from us.
Oh, that's so weird.
I don't know. It always made me laugh. I love the idea that he just wanted to know what was coming out, but he didn't actually want it. He just wanted to know. That was enough.
I just want to make sure that my decision to not read comic books anymore is founded. That's what he's saying to himself. Look at these stupid books.
Yeah. Or he read the solicitation. He's like, oh, it's a great story. It's like,
yeah. Just as good as reading it.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, a lot of customers, I hope they're well. And I guess again, bringing this full circle to the closing of Spider's Web, I feel so bad for the alternate realities refugees who ended up at Spider's Web
Also, Sean McInerney went there all the time, right? He still probably does. I haven't talked to Sean in years.
I mean, McInerney, Pete Dwyer, another Jared. He was another customer at the store. He was shopping there. Mike Capolino was shopping at Spider's Web.
Oh yeah, okay.
So like there were a bunch of people who landed there, and now they've had another shop close on them. Yeah. So.
Well, like one of the things that I remember distinctly about several of the AR crew when the store ended, they stopped reading comic books. That was the end. That was a convenient place to offload or off ramp. I think Brian O'Day might have been one of them. Doug Dosher was one of them. I certainly would have a small little pull list here and there, but wasn't a big reader. But I wonder if these guys now, if it's the end, you don't know, or that they're going to go to I guess, or maybe convert all to digital. I don't know.
It's hard to say. So. This is our For All Seasons event, and this is the winter episode.
This is also keeping in line with Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb?
Yes.
Okay, great. I didn't catch that until just now.
Yeah. And if you look at the show art for this run of episodes, we have the AR logo in the O, so it's like For All Seasons.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like the long R Halloween and our gatherings and our Last Supper and our documentary.
You're really milking that.
as long as I can, man. As long as I can, wherever I can. But just on this note of the seasons, and I don't know if there's anything specific that comes to mind, but I don't know. Winters at alternate realities, wintertime. Is there anything that, certain holidays, and like, is there anything that really stands out?
So funny you should say that because, when I was at the store, we didn't do anything special for Christmas, but I know that the next crew, you guys, Christmas was a big thing. I would go into the store and feel left out when I saw everybody's stockings hanging on the wall. I mean, it was a really great thing that you guys did. I mean, Christmas time at Alternate Realities was kind of like a celebration. Maybe you could talk about that because, again, we didn't do anything, my crew, but I always remember seeing the stockings every year that you guys put up.
Look, that was McInerney. Credit to him. He was the one who put those, who made those and put them up. So that and I use that photo every year around that time on social media because it's great, and I'm glad we have that picture of it. So that was very festive. I mean, for me, wintertime, that's when I met Rich Roney for the first time.
Really?
Some winter 2020, 2002, 2001, 2002, I think. So
yeah.
I still remember I was there, I guess, on my break, that holiday break, and I was there on that Wednesday breaking down the shipment, and Rich came in, which, as I came to learn, was his tradition at that time, and that's when I first met Rich.
Yeah, we would always do that. You're right, because it was Christmas break. Yeah, it was fun that Wednesday. A lot of people would show up.
Yeah, and then we started doing our white collar sales, where we would wear our fedoras and our ties and our vests, and it was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun. That's the white collar sale is probably what stands out the most. I think when I think of winter at Alternate Realities, but it was just a fun, festive time. I mean, I think certainly, again, like we worked there through high school and college, so you knew you were on break, so that was fun.
Yeah, you were there every day. Yeah, you're 100% right. During the Christmas holidays, man, I was there daily. I mean, I wish I could. I mean, I certainly didn't. I just wish I was able to relive some of those moments, for sure.
I know. I might have asked you this before, but if you could time travel to one day in Alternate Realities history, is there any one thing that you're like, that was the day I would go back to that?
Well, there's probably days that I would travel to for different reasons. One of the funniest days that I can remember right offhand, when you said that, it's just like, I would love to experience it again. And it was when we had bought the Rabbi collection, and I don't know if you know the story. So Steve had bought a collection of comic books, a very impressive comic book collection from a rabbi, and then we were going to go through it. Me and Rich Roney were going to bag and board it and price it and everything, and he winds up selling it to some guy who came into town visiting, who was not even like a customer, and it was over Thanksgiving. So the guy was just visiting family for Thanksgiving. He bought the whole collection. And that was like a domino effect of Arnie Sawyer coming in all pissed off because he didn't get a shot at buying it. Rich Roney was upset because he wasn't going to come in anymore to look at it. It was just this funny thing. But what transpired was Steve sitting in the back room rubbing his belly because it was so stressing him out that everybody was upset at him. It's a really cruel thing that I would want to go revisit that. But I was like the only one in the store at the time, and it was really funny.
That is hilarious.
He was like rubbing his belly, and he had like, his. Oh my gosh, it was funny. Yep. Anyway, I had to deal with that guy. But there were so many moments. I mean, I can't even think of one moment. I mean, they were all great. From like, just, I Anthony, I can't pick a day. Every day was the best day.
Look, it's like in The Office when the Dunder Mifflin, the Scranton branch is going to close, and Michael and Dwight go to the CFO's house to try to stop it, and they're in the car, and Dwight's like, what's your favorite moment from The Office? And Michael's just like, all of them. I love them all. And Dwight's like, even the moment when Jan said the branch was closing. So they were all great, except some of them. But
I'll tell you, Anthony, they were all great. And it was also great when I heard the store was closing. Even it really was, because we talked about it before. That store needed to go. Yeah, it was time.
Now look, it was, that place was so formative, and I'm sure I've said a version of this before, but well, look, you and I both went to Fordham at different times, and we commuted, and I don't know how involved you were there. I was not particularly involved. Like, I went down, I did my classes. Like, I had friends in my classes, but I think, for a lot of people, there are some really key defining friendships that they make in college, right? Yeah. And a lot of them that continue through adulthood, or even if they don't, but some real friendships they can point to. For me, the formative friendships that I made during college were at the comic shop. So that's kind of not the purpose, but like that's the role that the store really, fulfilled for me. And it really forged me as a person in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I would go to my classes. There were days or nights that I would study, but all other times I was at the comic shop. After class, before class, I was always there. That was the place I wanted to be. That's where my family was.
Yeah. Anyway, as far as other winter memories, those are, really doing those white collar sales, that was a blast. Yeah. I look back on that and I was like, as silly as it was, I don't know, people seemed to like it. It made an impression. We had fun. So that was a blast. I always remember there was one Christmas day, I think I was in high school, and I knew Steve was going to be at the store. Like, he was opening for a few hours, and there was an issue of Wizard that I wanted. It was like Michael Turner Supergirl on the cover. And I don't know why I didn't get it, because I thought I was getting Wizard regularly, but for whatever reason, like, I didn't get that issue. And I remember it was Christmas morning, and I was like, I think I'll go get it. Maybe I just wanted to see Steve. Maybe that was really, maybe that was it. But I remember going, he was just there by himself, and I got my Wizard. But but that's the thing. That was the default place to go always.
100%.
You're out, you got to take a leak, you go there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's a good place to go. Because you never know who's going to be there, you might run into. I never had visited the shop on Christmas Day, but me, Prem, and Steve went there on Thanksgiving once. So before like any of us had like Thanksgiving dinners, and we like spent most of the morning together at the comic shop. And I think we even had Burger King or something, surprisingly, on Thanksgiving. But, that was not uncommon.
Well, listen, is there anything else that you want to say or you want to talk about before we sign off for winter?
Oh, man, is that time already?
It's been an hour and a half.
So Anthony, thank you again for certainly keeping the store, the memory of the store, the community alive, certainly all these years, right? And also recognizing that it's time to shut the door, right? This podcast, like you said, is the final farewell. And I believe it this time. I really do. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on and be a guest and have closure again. Maybe this is time for all of us to move on. I think that we all keep alternate realities very closely guarded in our hearts. And I think, like I said, these friendships will continue. But, I think that just like Steve gave us all a chance to say goodbye, you're giving me and Rich and Steve a chance to say goodbye on the podcast. And, I've enjoyed being a member of reminiscing about the show for the store for years through you. So, thank you for all of that.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And, you're one of my best friends, and I so value your friendship and you coming on here. It's always a great time. And and on the other shows as well. I say this partially to plug, but also just for anyone who's like, hey, like I want to hear more of the Alternate Realities gang. I've had a number of people on Digging for Kryptonite and another exciting episode.
I've scaled the Batcave with you.
That's right. We did a whole thing on Long Halloween. So again, if you miss some of the crew, they are popping up on the other shows. So I hope you will check that out. But it's always a pleasure. Again, this is not your final appearance. You will return for the series finale, one way or the other. Whether you're here in person or we zoom you in.
If you're going to do it in person, I will be here.
Well,
you just got to tell me when.
Well, you know what? This is more.
You can't do it over the summer. Don't do it.
Why?
All right, you could do it.
Well, this is more a conversation for off mic. I know, because my instinct is, well, if you're here for the Terrificon, like we do it then
another time.
But I know I don't want to be, to your point, this whole thing about no distractions, right? So it's not about recording; it's just about hanging out. All right,
yeah,
all right.
We'll figure it out. Like I said, I'll make a special trip. I would love to do it. I already asked Rich if I could stay with him that week because we already talked about this, and so I'm going to stay with Rich wherever at the 7-Eleven he lives in. I don't know, wherever. And we'll come in and drive to you.
Wait, you asked Rich if you could stay at his place, and he agreed?
Yeah, he wasn't like jumping up and down agreed, but I kind of voluntold him that I was sleeping on his couch. Look, who else am I going to go? You have, you have Steph, you got the baby. Steve's got, his wife. I think that the only option is my other single friend.
You got to keep me posted. What?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, he's the only option. He knows that too.
He's gonna book a room and pay for it for you. Just you. Why he's gonna be like
as it gets closer. So, by the way, you're staying at the Marriott. I'll come and get you.
We know what? One last winter thing. It's the thing we never did that I wish we did. Drew concocted this, or you? I forget how it all came together, but the idea that we were going to go to Rich's house and take a picture, right?
Yeah. I don't remember who came up with this idea, but it was brilliant. So somebody had gotten Rich's address. Was it you? Somebody had gotten it, and we all thought it would be really funny to go. I think it might have been Steve came up with this to all of us drive to his house and take a photo on his front lawn, waving, and then give it to him as a Christmas present. Rich keeps the location of his home a closely guarded secret.
It's as funny as that. Imagine if we somehow were able to gain entry, and then we had this whole photo series, just at his kitchen table.
Whole thing. It's all of us just sitting on his bed, playing cards at his table. It would be hilarious.
We would never hear from him again. He would move, and that would be it.
I think we all jokingly said we would be on the lawn, and his wife would come out. It's who are you? We don't know this extent because you did an episode, right? Who is Rich Roney, right? We don't know. For as much as we know, we don't know.
He's the one we talk to the most, yet still some. Yeah. Well, we're there's so much mystery. We're making it a mystery. I mean, other than the fact that we've not ever been to where he lives, but other than that, we're speculating a lot. But the
mystique.
Well,
maybe you can get some of it out of it in your episode with him. Maybe
Yeah, he'll be our summer episode. So again, thank you very much for joining us for winter.
Oh, thank you so much for this. I appreciate it.
Really fantastic. Audience, really thank you as always. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you continue to enjoy our farewell run. Steve Oda will be here for spring. Rich Roney will be here for summer. We'll all get together for our fall farewell episode series finale. So make sure you tune in for all of that. Check out the other shows from the Flat Squirrel Podcast Network. And of course, as always, I love this sign off. I don't get to do it too often because we don't do a lot of these episodes anymore, but don't be a flat squirrel.
For so long I was hurting, but I'm better without you. Lost composure, but I made it through. For so long I was hurting, but I finally found the truth. It's no one's fault. We're all so lost. For so long I was hurting, but I'm gonna make it through. For so long we were hurt. gonna make it through. For so long I was hoping that I'd lay right there with you.